looks like this game's starting. Bratchedkata versus Sorry.
And we're actually going to start off with the Zed Lee Sin, so that was not the ban here.
No, and this matchup, I like the Swain TF, but the Lee Sin can actually get through this pretty well, I think. Also, having the Zed is good. The stuns are probably the most effective in this matchup, so I think it's going to fall on how well Sorry can or Bratchedkata can play around the stuns.
Oh man, and
On the opposing attack turns.
Bratchkata looks like he has so far kind of gotten the perfect opener. Has the Eye of the Dragon and the Zed and the Lee Sin. Every threat in the deck is on full display here on the early turns. And Sorry doesn't have anything for the first two. And I mean, turn 3 really is a reactive turn for you. Having the attack token here isn't the most useful. This is sort of your big Arachnoid Sentry to stop the Zed kind of turn, but not going to happen here. And I wouldn't be too surprised to just see a pass out of Sorry if the only thing my opponent has represented so far is an Eye of the Dragon.
And we see it there. Sorry, feeling the same kind of way about it. Only one mana disadvantage to this pass with a pass back, so I really like that pass. Yeah, Sorry. Good pass. I wonder if there's going to be a develop here. It could be tough. Like, if you develop, that opens a lot of plays for Sorry here. I mean, 7 cards in hand. Could develop a Keg into a Make It Rain to clear out the Zed. Or pressure it at least.
Yeah, I was a little curious if we were going to go bank Zed as you had mentioned, because we do have the Twin Disciplines. Playing it on 3 with only 2 spell mana backed up. While we do have the Pale Cascade, still isn't the most safe in the world. Death's Hand and Ravenous Flock still have potential to come down, or as you had mentioned, the kegged up Make It Rain. And the Pale Cascade really just doesn't protect you from as much as you would want it to in a matchup like this, but instead going to start off with the gold card onto the Lee Sin, and that's going to prompt a Bastion out of Bratchedkata. Says if you want to damage my Lee Sin, you're going to have to play at least one more spell. But this, I mean, in theory, actually does open up the Lee Sin to die this turn. If there's a Make It Rain and a Ravenous Flock on the side of Sorry, that's just a dead Lee Sin. But there's not.
No, doesn't seem to have it. And like you said, being able to protect this Lee Sin from any damage is very important when Sorry has access to all these Ravenous Flocks. Here comes a stun.
All right. Is the answer double Ravenous Flock? Is that what we were waiting on? I think that as much as you would like to play the Zenith Blade this turn, if you realize that your opponent didn't have any kind of answer for the Lee Sin at 5 HP when you're totally tapped out, maybe double Flock is the play. And if you go for this Zenith Blade, you're not going to be able to get the barrier up onto your Lee Sin this turn.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely going in for the pass. This would completely take away the effectiveness of the stun here at the trade of 3 health. Yeah, I like the pass game. Yeah, the pass game from both these players. Identifying good points is to pass. I definitely respect that. And we see the keg developed.
I think this just has to continue to be a pass out of Bratchedkata. 3 mana is still within the range of what you were playing around, and I'm curious to see if Sorry is just going to fire it off. How do you feel about playing a deck like this into the Lee Sin? Is it better to constantly try and remove this Lee Sin and make your opponent have the answers and try to run them out of resources? Or because of things like Guiding Touch and Pale Cascade, is everything too self-replacing to the point where it's better to just try and ignore the Lee Sin, kill everything else, and win around it?
Yeah, I like to try and win around it as much as possible. If you can get a clean kill on a Lee Sin, definitely like that. But as you play into this Lee Sin, it's getting protected by these spells, which, you have more spells to maybe attack it. But as they're replacing, like you see the Pale Cascade here, picking up another card, it's also leveling this Lee Sin throughout. And if you don't present the spells, make them use the spells for protection, then you make them play into first to try and level their Lee Sin. And I think I'd rather be on the reactive side of it for sure.
All All right. So once again, you've gotten that make it rain out of your opponent. You've gotten that ravenous flock out of your opponent. Maybe now is the time where you can go for this Zenith Blade, but instead, no, it's going to be the Twin Disciplines. Get that burst attack onto this Twisted Fate, go in with the Dragonling as well, heal up a little bit. And I mean, Bratchkata seems to be in a really good position for the time being. These Spacey Sketchers aren't going to get value anytime soon, but they don't really need to. The Lee Sin is online as well as he could be this point in, and salvage the answer from sorry. That's basically nothing. And there goes one of your Noxian guillotines, sort of the cleanest answer for the Lee Sin as it does get through the barrier that he presents.
Yeah. And I'm sure Bratchkata took note of that toss right there because, like you said, that is one of the most effective cards of removing Lee Sin, especially now that we see it damaged.
But now, I mean, Bratchkata is totally out of fast spells. This Lee Sin as vulnerable as it's ever going to be, but I mean, sorry doesn't know that. And it's very reasonable that it's 6 cards in my opponent's hand. I'm never going to try and kill this Lee Sin. It didn't work out last time. I got the bad end of that deal. So we are actually going to see the Zenith Blade fired off now with the second copy in hand. We don't need to Daybreak this, and we're going to buff it up out of range of everything except for that one remaining Noxian Guillotine in Sari's deck here as we go into turn 7.
Yeah, and even still, that brought it up to enough health to be fully healed. So even the last guillotine is going to require some damage on this Lee Sin. And it's kind of hard to play this position. The threat from the Lee Sin, like you mentioned earlier, we have with Cash Vision, we see that there's no fast spell here. But of 5 cards, are you ever going to expect your Lee Sin opponent to not have a single spell or 2?
Oh, absolutely not. Absolutely not. It's a pipe dream. But it might be a pipe dream that Sari's going to live as he does go in for this attack with the hired gun.
Yeah, again, trying to maybe get the Lee Sin player to expend some of the spells. We've seen games over the course of this weekend where they actually come up with no spells to just try and protect their Lee Sin, and then they don't have it burst speed to be able to attack, enabling possibly gold cards or other stuns on the Lee Sin if there's a slower spell being cast to enable the challenger. But Now there's the damaged Lee Sin. I wonder what the play is going to be from Kata. We're going to go fishing with the Sketcher.
Equinox to set up the counter for the turn 8 Leviathan. But, I mean, we saw Sari go for the kill on the Lee Sin earlier, trying to grind Xiramus out of resources. And now, yep, there's the Noxian Guillotine. That is going to be the kill on the Lee Sin. But, I mean, we still have a Zed, a Zenith Blade, and this Mentor of Stones. So that is going to still be a really big threat that you're going to have to deal with.
Absolutely. The Mentor wants the Zed here, but that's just going to be just as big as a Lee Sin when it comes to the removal required to remove it. The full attack here.
I like going for the attack. There's no Riptide Rex threat this turn, as there's nothing in a Twisted Fate Swain deck that's going to activate that for 0 mana. If you had gone for the Zenith Blade, then you open yourself up to the possibility of, a Death's Hand or something coming out in response. And giving the unleveled Zed Overwhelm really doesn't make that much of a difference because they can just go ahead and block the Shadow instead.
Absolutely. And now we see the Equinox for the Leviathan. Stranded in play. It will still make for a hefty blocker against Zed or Zed Shadows.
Ooh. That's a top deck. And this Swain still isn't leveled. The Leviathan is offline. We have a Bastion to protect this Zed from anything that we could possibly have. We can get the Zenith Blade down onto it this turn. As Zap Sprayfin really isn't much, and I don't think that there's anything Sari's going to be able to do from this position to sort of come back into this one. We even have the Spacey Sketcher to throw out a block onto the Leviathan if we need to. Yeah, I would have to think that, he's not even going to go for the Zenith Blade, or maybe just understanding that Sari, certainly going to take that elusive attack this turn. I can go ahead and wait until post-combat to commit my mana.
Yeah, and Sari doesn't know that there's a Zenith Blade in hand also. Because the other one was played without Daylight.
Daybreak.
Yeah, Daybreak. If it was a known quantity, then it would be a different situation.
Yeah. And I believe Bratchkata was the player that was only playing 2 copies of this card, so even daybreaking this one doesn't matter as there are no additional copies left in the deck.
That's right. Bratchkata only with the 2 Zenith Blades. See if that comes into play here, because picking up an extra Zenith Blade on this board is going to be good in case the Zed fails some kind of way.
Yeah, I mean, you
for
do
the
have
next
the
Zed.
additional Zed in hand, but I mean, as cool as it is to go ahead and bring that out, oh, we're actually going to go for the gold card. And this could just be, yeah, the Bastion fired off again to try and prevent the damage from coming down on the Zed in the first place. Go ahead and stop any hopes of a Ravenous Flock trying to kill this unit. And this means that with only 2 mana left, we're pretty free to follow up with this Zenith Blade for the turn and just go for a really big attack next turn. That'll be, I think, 9 attack on the Zed. Still won't be giving Overwhelm to the Shadow, though.
Gonna pass again. Maybe, is there any reason to keep this Zenith Blade? Possibly to try and draw another Lee Sin?
Yeah, that's probably what he's going for, and I really don't think that the Overwhelm on the Zed matters too much until you get it leveled. The extra 1 attack would have let you level it this turn guaranteed, though, as you would overwhelm the Leviathan, and then you can go ahead and level off of that. The Zap Spraven will have to block this other 8/7 Shadow, but at the end of the day, I don't think it's the biggest deal. As you had mentioned, he might be saving it for the Lee Sin. My concern with that is I don't think Lee Sin gets it done at this point. You don't have any spells in hand, and the Mentor of the Stones dying, will get you the gems, but that's something that your opponent could have played around if they really thought a Lee Sin was coming sometime soon and just continue to take this 1 damage over and over again, because I don't think it has a big impact on the longevity of the game. But now with these gems in hand, the Lee Sin top deck is back online, and I mean, Bratchkata has done a great job of continuously drawing answers to whatever Sorry could have, gets the Hush, now has the Deny. This should be a pretty safe Zed, but it is not safe from a Leviathan Swain combo, and that's why the Equinox onto that first Leviathan was so pivotal, but now we are in a situation where this Zed could start to get stunned.
Yeah, the whole board, there's no other unit, and then also the Zed in hand is stranded with the Zed in play.
Ooh, yeah, and I mean, one of these Swain's Ravenous Flocks will actually level the Swain. As weird as this sounds, I think I wanted to gem. Yeah, I wanted to gem this Eye of the Dragon to get it out of the Ravenous Flock range,
yeah.
But granted, Sorry could just flock his own Leviathan in order to level this Swain, but I think that is such an oddball play that I potentially put my opponent on not seeing that line, and instead it's going to be the Death's Hand now onto this unit. And I mean, this Deny, there's really too much removal out of Sorry for you to want to use this on anything at this point. I think you do have to try and find a Lee Sin and then have this Deny protect the Lee Sin. So as you had mentioned earlier, it looks like we're back on that plan as the Zed is going to sort of fall here, but never mind. It's going to be the Deny.
Yeah, I think that was a big missed opportunity from not gemming up this Eye of the Dragon. In the face of 2 known flocks.
Yeah, especially the pass back had the opportunity, because what else are we using these gems for?
Yeah,
we only need
if
one of them
level gem. Yeah, if there's a leveled Lee Sin, then and that's going to be 5 with the Overwhelm. That's 10. You only need a single gem with the Overwhelm to be lethal.
Yep, things definitely looking rough for Bratchedkata here. Not going to be able to take an attack this turn is Sorry, as whatever goes in is just going to die to the Zed. Maybe you go in with this silenced Leviathan, because if you can remove the Zed with the Ravenous Flock, you're going to feel a little bit safer, just in case Bratchkata does find some kind of way to get around your Swain, get that off the board, or your big Leviathan, something to stop you from stunning out the board. But I mean, now the Zed is stunned. You have the option to play the double Flock onto it anyway if you really want to. And Eye of the Dragon is not Lee Sin. I don't think Bratchkata is going to be able to come back into this one.
No, as we've seen it plenty of times, the Swain Leviathan not only stunning this turn, but then also stunning the blockers providing a huge open attack on the next
This
turn.
Oh, this doesn't even work because of the Ravenous Flux.
No.
And I can't think of anything that Spacey Sketcher would be able to find to get you out of this situation. Maybe you go for the Trickster and pump it up a lot, but without this Mentor of Stones online, I don't think Trickster or a copy of the Serpent would be enough to either kill the Swain or kill your opponent. I guess we're trying to dig for Messenger in order to push through enough draw to find the Lee Sin as sort of our last ditch effort, but sorry, not even going to give him the chance. Does have that flock.
Yeah, I don't think there's any out to here. Plus, I mean, 4 other cards on top of 2 more flocks. The stun lock on board, yeah. What's that? Oh, Equinox, yeah.
Yeah, Equinox onto the second Leviathan would have been... I don't even know if that would have been enough of a difference maker.
No, likely not. Being able to just attack into this Zed. I mean, it would have made for a better game for sure. Ooh, and here's a Clone Strike.
Just because chat's hard calling me out on it. The problem with the Equinox is that when you go to silence my Leviathan, I just kill your Zed in response with double Ravenous Flock, and all of a sudden, the silence on my Leviathan no longer means anything.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, that's the third Eye of the Dragon, and Bratchedkata is just reliving the same turn over and over again, and now this Riptide Rex definitely going to be the game ender. And we did hear from production that both players banned the War Mother's Call, so both of them kind of on the same strategy of saying, this Lee Sin deck is actually beatable, as we see Sari pick up the win here in game number 1 with the Twisted Fate Swain.
Yeah, I wonder what the thought process. Yeah, probably. Yeah, this deck is beatable. Swain TF is really one of the more effective decks against it, as we saw there, especially with all the extra stuns that you don't always see. As we saw earlier, Mystery Emotional even playing Arachnoid Sentry in the TF Gangplank deck, which is not a common choice, maybe a concession towards this, because that's one of the better parts about TF Swain against this deck in particular.
Yeah, I think I had mentioned earlier when we were talking about deep, Maokai seems like a good answer to Ionia combo decks that is taken off the table by how fast this Lee Sin deck is, but Riptide Rex has always been very effective against these combo decks. There's not enough protection in the world to save a Lee Sin from that Riptide, assuming that your board is solely the Lee Sin. You do kind of get to go wide sometimes. Maybe the shots don't all line up to him on him and things feel pretty good, but yeah, I mean, that Riptide was the game ender, but definitely not the game decider.
Absolutely. And now we get to see the Diana versus the Zed. The Battle of the Co-Champions. We talked yesterday about Diana, maybe in earlier today, about Diana and how it should be good against these aggressive decks that may, handling the board position early before you can start lining up an eye or something, or getting Lee Sin on the line. And how do you think it plays out in the mirror? Is Diana going to be as good as Lee Sin, or contribute more to the board?
I think it comes down to more of the cards that you build to support the Zed and the Diana. I do think that having 5 Pale Cascades is going to be a lot better for Sari. Sort of the best spell in the deck, the best cantrip. I don't think that these copies of the Twin Disciplines are going to do as much as the Diana. I don't think... My theory with Zed has always been Zed is insane in the mirror when neither of us find Lee Sin. But the second either of us finds it, Zed feels completely irrelevant. And with the Zed spell, the Shadow spell, not having nearly as much value as the Pale Cascade, I think that Diana is going to play out a little bit stronger if both players find their Lee Sin as they should.
Yeah, that's a good take. We'll see what Sari comes up with here. This Mentor is providing some early buffs to this Eye of the Dragon, and then a pass, no play. Eats 5 mana, loses 2 of it.
All right, this is the important turn. I mean, Bratchedkata has 2 Lee Sins, and it doesn't look like Sari has any if he's starting off that turn with a Dusk Petal Dust, unless he's burst passing.
That's always the weirdest burst pass to me, that petal. But it is something you can do.
Yeah, I guess, if I don't have Lee Sin, it probably prevents my opponent from getting down Lee Sin this turn, but I don't think that is really a difference maker. and to trade a card for something like that, but we do have the Diana. Okay, I would imagine this is going to be a Pale Cascade, and then Bratchkata going to have the option: do I want to get down the Lee Sin, or do I want to use this Twin Discipline to kill the Diana? If that is the case,
Yeah, would move up to 6 toughness, but like you said, sorry, with the Diana, there is a possibility for a second Pale Cascade. That looked like a Diana's Pale Cascade to start.
it was. So he actually could start with Guiding Touch and heal this up to a 3/5 and see where that takes us. But no, instead is going to use the Twin Discipline to start things off. And I sort of would have preferred the Guiding Touch first, just because it does still leave me the potential to get Lee Sin down this turn. But there is the second Diana's Pale Cascade. So all 3 copies of Diana in the opening hand for Sari. And it actually will survive this combat, though, as it is up to 4 toughness.
Absolutely. Bratchkata does get to keep the eye alive. The Mentor's still on board. Gonna possibly see an open attack here because this Diana does go back down to a 2-2. Maybe spread this Mentor around, getting a Sketcher down.
As juicy as that Serpent looked, I do prefer the Moon Silver.
Yeah, it looked like a good Serpent for sure. I mean, you got a Mentor in play, a Mentor in hand.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, we might see Moon Silver into the Lee Sin spell for a very, very big Sonic Wave turn here.
Got some kind of response out of Sari. Zenith Blade onto the Diana. That is a nothing play. That's really not anything. This is not looking good for Sari.
That ain't it, Chief. They're gonna the 3/3, only 2 mana to protect. Even with another Pale Cascade, maybe heal. Gonna be able to do 2 spells here, 2 spells here. If he wants to shield, probably valuing keeping the Lee Sin in hand though. Doesn't have to play another spell. If something hairy happens, a Pale Cascade still wouldn't finish off the Lee Sin.
It would actually be the level up for Diana if there's another Pale Cascade.
Oh, would it be? Oh yeah, it's been. Yeah, you're right. So yeah, if a Pale Cascade does come down, could play the Sonic Wave to protect the Lee Sin in play, which is probably more valuable than playing a second Lee Sin since it does have that Mentor buff.
And this is just a really bad situation for Sari. Anytime this Mentor of the Stones gets online with the Lee Sin, and you're in such a disadvantaged board state like Sari is, even if you block it, it doesn't feel as good because it just hyper accelerates that Lee Sin level up.
Yeah, absolutely. Gotta leave the Mentor in play, which is...
It sucks. It's not a great feeling where, this thing...
Fork. Yeah.
There's another, not only is there another Mentor in Bratchkata's hand, but there's a Zed alongside it. I think that this probably just ends on Bratchkata's next attack turn. But he still doesn't have Overwhelm on the Lee Sin. So we are still a little farther away from that sort of being the end of the game here, but I do think this Zed will be enough at the end of the day. And now that even the Hush picked up.
That's one of the better cards in the mirror for sure.
All right, Dusk Petal Dawn. So if this is a Diana coming down after this, she will be leveled. But no, it was just to turn on a Pale Cascade, going to get another draw. And Sari, making plays like that definitely feels like you're on the ropes. You are really digging for that Lee Sin. You have nothing else in play, nothing to even try and survive your opponent's Lee Sin turn.
Took the pass, didn't develop the Zed there.
And if Sari doesn't play a unit here, I think this will be the turn that we see the Lee Sin's Resonating Strike. Throw Challenger down onto, I don't know, I guess the Spacey Sketcher, maybe buff the hell out of the Zed and go in for, just a quick lethal with the Zed. But there is the Horn of the Dragon. I don't know that changes anything. I'm not actually sure how far Bratchkata's Lee Sin is from leveling, but I think it will be able to survive an encounter with this unit, especially with the Spell Shield available.
Yeah, being able to bury up this Lee Sin, you could even grow it with the Mentor. I think you probably want to get this Zed up to 6 attack if you possibly can. And like a 6-mana development, this Mentor comes down, still going to have mana to play both spells.
Yeah, I think I like, kind of pulling these two units to the side and all running on the Zed this turn. My opponent's only going to have mana for one Hush, so as long as I get the barrier onto this Lee Sin, it'll still be able to kill this Horns of the Dragon. If they Hush the Lee Sin, they die to the Zed. If they Hush the Zed, then they survive, but they still lose their Horn of the Dragon. And yeah, with this Zenith Blade coming down now, I do have to assume that this is going to be lethal for Xiramus with this Resonating Strike.
Hasn't played a spell yet. You did mention about these Mentors and how you often don't want to block them to give them the gems. It's funny how that plays with the Sonic Wave. You could just make it happen here because the Zed's going to produce a Shadow, so Sketcher's not going to want to get into the combat. And I like this lineup here because then you don't have to worry about shielding the Lee Sin. You get to keep the Hush for the next turn. But actually, this is just lethal. So
yeah, that was 14 damage from the Zed alone coming in there. So, all right, we're gonna tie it up 1-1, and now Bratchkata is gonna have the opportunity to combat the Lee Sin deck with his Twisted Fate Swain. See if he can repeat the success that Sari found in game number 1.
Yeah, the ping pong back and forth. This was a full mirror. You got the same bands out of both decks. Let's see if the story's a little different. Again, there is no Zed. It's Diana. We did see the Zed play a part in the match earlier against Swain TF. Still came up short, but I don't think the Diana adds much to this match, honestly.
I'm inclined to agree with you. I think that, Zed doesn't feel like it adds a whole lot either. Generally, it's pretty easy to remove, especially when you have the extra keg generators in this petty officer. But Diana also really not feeling like she's adding a whole lot. There's a lot of 2/2s in the TF Swain deck, so Diana doesn't really play well on defense. And because she's nearly impossible to level in a deck like this, as Diana and Pale Cascade are the only Nightfall cards, you're not going to really get into a position where she generates a lot of value by constantly leveling and challenging these units turn after turn.
Yeah, and the association that you have with this Dustbringer, just having it included in your deck to be able to play Diana, it's really one of the weaker units. You see this Make It Rain here, even if there was no keg in play, TF this, we see this Ballage Water Nox deck have no trouble dealing with low toughness units.
The one thing I will say for the Diana, and I don't know how well this is actually going to work out because of all this extra keg generation, is it does make the Twisted Fate level up win condition a lot less realistic for Bratchedkata. In a Lee Sin matchup, because there's so little removal, if your opponent doesn't find the Lee Sin, then you actually can turbo out that TF and get that one done. But I think that the Diana will add enough to go ahead and sort of take that win con off the table for Bratchedkata, who hasn't even found a Lee Sin yet. And now we're just going to straight away fire off and Make It Rain.
And take out one of these blockers, soften up this Eye of the Dragon to where you can attack with this 2/2.
Yeah, we even have the Arachnoid Sentry to stun out this Lee Sin and just have a really big attack turn. Everything is threatening lethal onto this Eye of the Dragon, so no Dragonling's going to be coming out this game, I would presume. There's still the possibility of a Pale Cascade or a Guiding Touch to buffer up a little bit and help her survive the interaction, but we'll actually have to see how that one plays out. And Bratchkata representing at least 8 damage this turn if nothing extra comes out of Sari. Sorry, 7 damage. Down to 12, same thing. We do have the Swain Leviathan in hand already, so feeling pretty good about our chances going into the late game.
Yeah, absolutely. Also, keeping pressure on this Lee Sin. If you can get this Eye of the Dragon off the board, the aggressive game looks pretty strong. You're going to really pressure that Lee Sin into getting into more combats, playing spells more proactively instead of reactively to try and deal with this board. Which could take them off of the protection needed to against potential removal spells.
Speaking of removal spells, really not a lot available for Bratchedkata. I mean, we saw Sari kind of throw removal at the Lee Sin until it stuck, but Bratchedkata not going to have enough spells to do anything like that. I mean, doesn't even have the mana for the double fervor right now to try and kill the Lee Sin in response to the Zenith Blade. And that does always sort of feel like one of its more vulnerable moments. You know, when the Zenith Blade is on the stack, if I can throw off enough spells in response, then he does have to fire off two more spells beforehand. And the Dusk Petal Dust does throw a lot of wrench into that works. There's so many times where you find yourself where your opponent's on 3 mana and you're like, oh, well, you know, they can't actually kill or they can't protect the Lee Sin because there's no 1 mana spells in the deck and gems can't be played in response to something. Dusk Petal Dust breaks the rules and is going to give this Lee Sin barrier here.
Absolutely. That was kind of interesting. Played the Dust after the Diana. I don't know if that was intentional or not, but you're right. Yeah, just having an extra spell for that Lee Sin, we did see it show up there. 1 mana burst speed as well. And we are seeing this Diana here. I mean, a Zed would have been more expensive. Diana clearing out that one line that I was talking about earlier of maybe pressuring this Lee Sin and clearing out these units. Now, I think Bratchedkata might, because of this Diana, be backed into a corner where they have to actually try and remove this Lee Sin. Where the other option I was seeing with this double fervor hand of maybe, okay, you're coming in with the kick and the overwhelm, we can mitigate that. Just Noxian Fervor face, you're at 12, and try and burn them out. Could be difficult. The Diana looked pretty good right there.
Yeah, this Death Sand even takes the Swain and all other plays off the table for Bratchedkata for the turn. So that is, I mean, one of the weakest turns that you could represent in a deck like this. But he will have an opportunity to get this Swain Leviathan online after Sari's attack on turn 7. Having the attack token on 8 really playing out well for Bratchedkata here gives you the best sort of opportunity to try and set up that combo and stun out the Lee Sin the same way that he fell in game number 1 by continuously getting his big threat stunned out, you know, is very much on the table here. And unlike the Zed version, you don't have that Shadow Shift to try and return a stun Lee Sin to your hand and get it back down.
Absolutely. I think one problem that the Swain TF deck could have, Bratchedkata could run into this here, is how patient this Lee Sin plays. Because being able to establish both a Lee Sin and a Swain, I mean not a Lee Sin, a Leviathan and a Swain, can be difficult because Sari could just decline a non-lethal attack. Doesn't have to attack. If you try and develop the Swain or the Leviathan, can go in for the kick. And realistically, you can never play both units in the same turn to try and set up the stun lock.
And that brings us to the culmination. You should always be playing one smooth soloist in your TF Swain deck so that you can get down Swain and Leviathan in the same turn. It's what we've been waiting to tell you all day. The secret tech is out there. Remember to play that one so that you can actually beat these Lee Sin players.
Hashtag sponsored by the Smooth Soloist Foundation. Gotta get it in there. Gotta have the Smooth Soloist, baby. I've seen that card in some lists for sure, to where you can do both. That's the big upside to possibly playing that.
Troll? No, that's not troll. That was a real tech from me to you. You can take that one to the bank. But for the time being,
but
things not looking great for Bratchedkata. As you had mentioned, Sari looks like he's going to take this one pretty patient. And never mind, Lee Sin Sonic Wave does mean we're almost certainly going to see the attack out of Sari here. I can't imagine that we used a Lee Sin spell to burst pass and end the turn. But it's not out of the question.
Interesting. This TF pickup is nice. Can be countered by Bastion, a gold card. It doesn't do anything towards the aim of setting up Swain Leviathan, though.
I guess this is just another burst pass. I mean, there's no reason not to play the second half of the Lee Sin spell if we are just ending the turn, but
yeah, just using the Lee Sin spell maybe just to get a little closer. Not going to need to put too many more spells on the stack for the OTK turn in the future. But it's got to be on the forefront of both players' minds, Swain Leviathan. I mean, especially after Bratchedkata lost to it earlier, right?
Yeah. Or are we just going for the hyper Lee Sin level? No, we don't even level the Lee Sin. Okay, now we're going to level the Lee Sin. But this is actually not great for Sari, as the Swain is only at 8 out of 12. for Bratchedkata. So this Noxian Fervor is actually necessary to level this Swain. So we get to kill this Eye of the Dragon here, or even go face with it. But we get the necessary components to level the Swain. We get the Swain down. We get the Leviathan down on the following turn. And sorry, all in on this play. You asked how patiently was he going to play. The answer is not at all. Forces out 5 spells in a turn to level the Lee Sin and go for the kill.
Yeah, and we see that with the Noxian Fervor countering the kick. I thought that was going to be the line when he was going wide earlier, and we see it come back into play here on just being able to survive and not going to be able to stop this Swain Leviathan setup.
All right, sorry. What do you have to answer this? I cannot think of anything in this deck. Will of Ionia has been cut from all of these lists. This is the scariest position. And you can't hush your Lee Sin to get it out of the stun because it's going to turn off all of its abilities for the turn. You're not going to be able to kick your opponent. You're not going to be able to get the barrier back onto him. And sorry, unless you can flood the board with things bigger than the Lee Sin, which, by the way, is impossible in a deck like this, the Swain Leviathan is going to end the game potentially on the next attack turn. Oh, and Riptide, what is it with Riptide Rex coming out at the end of the game?
Shows up right after the Leviathan thing. Another effective tool. I feel like the Swain TF is probably the strongest version against these Lee Sin decks, because as we've seen, this is the second game in this set where it has completely shut down the Lee Sin combo. Eye of the Dragon, Horn of the Dragon showing up.
The Horn of the Dragon almost represented something, but with double Ravenous Flock in Bratchedkata's hand, and with this getting pushed down to 2 HP, I don't think it's going to be enough.
No, with only 6 mana to protect, would need to at least give it overwhelm to even start the conversation. Would leave you with only 3 mana. Not going to be able to defend it, but against one of the most efficient removal spells in the game, in Ravenous Flock.
Yeah, so this should be Bratchedkata. I would assume picking this one up. There's really shouldn't be anything that Sari can do. And we'll be moving on to the top 4.
Let's look ahead. Maybe we'll see some nice emote play at the end here.
I'll just straight up going in with the Horns of the Dragon, actually. Says, you know what? You can offer up your Riptide Rex, or you can do nothing, and I'll just win the game. All right, what do we have here? Deny onto the Flock. That's not going to be enough. Even a Pale Cascade or a Guiding Touch would not be enough to save this Horns of the Dragon, and that does mean that this Riptide Rex is going to get through. The one thing that, as a caster, I still struggle with is this solid, 90 seconds of downtime between the game ending and the players having to play all the cards and go through all the motions of actually, ending the game.
Well... It's funny because I'm the one on the gears over here, and I know this game's over with. You can't really pan off of it because, like I said, you got one thing to hope for: the emote game. We might be able to get the emote game. Nope. And we did see one thing there that I didn't think of actually, so I will point that out: is the
hush to block.
The hush to block. Yeah, the hush to block. I wasn't thinking of that.